5 1/3 yards of this 24-inch repeat pattern transformed with a 45-degree triangle into these cascading kaleidoscopes. There are 6-inch and 12-inch blocks. Find a fabric that you like. In this case, the repeat is 24 inches. The pattern does not matter. It is the color combination that will end up in your quilt. I began with this drum, found it again down below, found the spot on it where the sticks go, and measured, and this is a 24-inch repeat. So I will need 24 inches 8 times. I have located a string on the guitar that I'm going to use for my reference point. I've put a pin at this point along the entire edge. It is my 24-inch reference point to know where to start making my layer. Because I was a garment sewer first, and grain line is extremely important to a garment sewer, and because I know this fabric has enough threads per square inch to not bruise the edge drastically, I'm going to put a clip where each pin was and tear my fabric to create my 8 layers. June Taylor makes this rotary cutting tool. It's called the Shape Cut Plus and comes with 1/2-inch openings that a rotary cutter can follow along to make perfect parallel strips. I have lined up my June Taylor tool for a 4.5-inch cut, which I will be cutting for my Kaleidoscope ruler, which recommends a 4.5-inch cut for an 8-inch octagon. See, the rotary cutter just follows right along in the tool. Line it up parallel at the top. And I have a 4.5-inch strip. To cut the blocks, you will be needing a 45-degree triangle ruler. I did want to show you that the Kaleido ruler and a standard right triangle are exactly the same ruler, except the Kaleido ruler has cut off the tip and has done all of the math for you to get your strips to make your kaleidoscope. But if you own a right angle ruler, you can go ahead and cut these strips. Just create lines for where you're going to be cutting at the 4.5-inch mark. Take your Kaleidoscope ruler, line it carefully up along the bottom, cut along one edge, remove that, and then take your entire row and on the mat, turn it around. From this point on, we're going to alternate back and forth the Kaleidoscope ruler one side, flip it over, carefully line it up again, 2, will end up with 9 identical stacks of 8 for your octagon. Begin by sewing pairs of your triangles together with a shortened stitch length and 1/4-inch seam allowance, starting from the wide end going to the narrow. Chain stitch them together, adding one block right after the other until you have sewn the 4 pairs of your block. And I will take and press. That's not moving the iron around, but rather just lifting and setting the iron on each triangle pair. This is to set the seam. Once I set the seam, I still need to clip the thread tails that are between my chains off on these. And now I will be opening these up, and I will press the seams open. By pressing the seams open, it's going to be reducing the bulk in the center of the block. Usually if you just get it started to be opened, the iron will just finish opening all of it as you press up each of your 4 pairs. I will once more be joining pieces together. Again, I will have 2 sections. These are pairs of triangles and face up, and 2 that will face down. This time I want to be careful with the point, so I will be putting a pin through the seam allowance at the seam about 1/4 of an inch down at the point to make sure that I've lined these seams up before sewing. I'm back at my machine where I will be putting my 2 pairs together to make a group of 4. Again, it's the 1/4 inch seam allowance that I'll be stitching up from the bottom of the triangle to the top. In this case, I have a little bit where it is knotting at the bottom, so I need to make an adjustment. Don't you hate it when that happens? I'll be stitching the 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way up. I will be trying to keep the seams that I have pressed open still open as we come to the edge of my sewing, and take out my pin just before I reach it so as not to break the pin. We are back to the ironing board where once more we set our seam just by pressing, not ironing, so you notice it's just holding down, not back and forth, to set the seam into the fabric. Once that is done, I will be opening this up. Again, using my finger to get it started, opening the seam. You could do this all to one side, but we have found that the best thing is when you press it open to reduce the amount of bulk that's going to happen up here where all 8 pieces are intersecting. I now have my newest seams pressed open, and I now only have 2 pieces. Again, I will turn one of them right side up, leave one of them right side down, and we will be stitching the last sections together to form our block. When I am done sewing this section, I will have the fun of seeing the result of how this particular Kaleidoscope block will work. You notice it is bulky here at the center. It is also where I have put 1 pin. Taking it out now that I've set. Okay, here we are, the last step, pressing that last center seam open. It's now open, and now the exciting part, ta-da! This is our very first pattern that we have created with this block. This is a completed octagon for an 8-inch octagon shape if you add the triangles on the side as you see with the white. The Kaleidoscope ruler does have a template also for the triangles you would need to cut to sew them on. I have chosen to make 6-inch squares out of this, which will be trimming away instead of adding the triangles to make them be 8-inch squares. I have now changed to the June Taylor cord.